So, of course, this is a momentous day, and it was quite a homecoming for Donald Trump. But the indictment is not any surprise to us. We've known that it was probably going to be basically focused on these falsification of business records, and that's exactly what we're seeing.
There's basically one charge here, and just a lot of instances of it. And so each of the charges is basically another false business record. And so, but the basic underlying what's going on here is there's an illegal scheme, according to the district attorney, to pay off people who had embarrassing information about the former president, and this is what makes it illegal, according to the district attorney, and then to falsely document what was happening in the records of the entity in terms of reimbursements and where these payments were going. And so, and then each time they falsely documented, because they did this over a period of a year, according to the district attorney, and they used the invoices and then recordings in the business records themselves. Kind of each entry is another count in the indictment. And so it seems to me that it kind of all will, there's a little bit of difference because there's maybe different payoffs, but my take on it is it will all kind of rise or fall together.
For me, reading the indictment, it was interesting to me that there was no conspiracy charge. Prosecutors love conspiracy charges because it lets them broaden the evidence. They can get in statements of co-conspirators, actions of co-conspirators, even if they're uncharged. So here, the statement that was issued read very much like a conspiracy charge, because it talked about a scheme in which, the National Enquirer, Michael Cohen, and Trump agreed that they were really going to try to catch and kill any stories that could potentially hurt his chances of winning an election. But we didn't actually see a conspiracy charge, which leads me to believe that they felt that they had enough evidence that they could bring in, this theory of prosecution without that charge. Alvin Bragg is a methodical, careful, experienced prosecutor, and I'm sure that he has really carefully combed all the evidence and thought about how he needs to corroborate evidence, because, look, he has a potentially flawed witness in Michael Cohen. He's admitted to lying and changing his story. He's a convicted felon, and so he is open to cross-examination. So I think we'll find that Bragg has made sure to get, text messages, audio calls, lots of documents that will support and corroborate his testimony. Bragg wants jurors that are willing to go through the layers of this prosecution, because they have to be willing to look through and see that this is a sort of a technical accounting violation, but yet the underlying crime itself, whether it be tax laws or election law crimes, what it really comes down to is Trump trying to deceive the electorate, and he wants them to care about that.
So far it's happened, I think the arraignment was a little longer than usual, but basically it's happening how things happen in this space, usually with no one besides the parties paying attention. And so now there's going to be a lot of delay, like in terms of like when something real happens next. There's going to be, I think, a long waiting period when the Trump's lawyers will be able to think about strategies to try to kind of defeat or dismiss the indictment here. And so there'll probably be some defense motions that are filed to ask the judge to just dismiss this case, and that will take a while. It seemed like there might be a venue motion, so asking to move the case somewhere else, that will slow things down. And I think that motion might have to be heard by the appeals court, not the trial court. And so that's what I expect to come next, is just a lot of legal process, and that you can imagine writing these motions, researching the motions, That's going to take a lot of time. The prosecutor is going to have to disclose evidence about their case to the defense. That's going to take time. And so I think there'll just be a long period of waiting for the next hearing and and then even longer till the judge rules on some of that and makes what's left over for trial a little more narrow.
It does feel like there's always been this taboo about bringing charges against a president or even a former president. You know, this happens in other countries, but here this has never happened. And so I think in some ways, you know, once you break that taboo or that ceiling, it does open the door for, you know, for others to come forward. And I think we'll see an indictment in Georgia and potentially in the federal investigations. So if there's one thing about Donald Trump, it's that you can predict, it's that he's unpredictable. It's very hard to say how this will affect him. On the one hand, we're seeing a rise in the polls and in his fundraising. On the other hand, I think how can the GOP go forward with a campaign where, you know, the top of the ticket is somebody who's under indictment and a criminal defendant? So it's very hard to know how this will go. Our Constitution doesn't bar, you know, somebody for running for election, but it's hard to imagine, you know, that path. But, you know, you never know with Donald Trump.